Dollhouse Season 2, Episode 12, The Hollow Men, is the penultimate episode. It continues from where the previous episode left off, in the middle of a flashback with Boyd and his slave Clyde 2.0 meeting Caroline. Boyd dances the villain dance in tune with Joss's suspicion of large corporations, and he indicates he has interest in using Caroline as his pawn specifically because of some characteristic of her blood that was revealed in a medical test. I'm not sure if any feminists criticized Boyd's mistreatment of a woman. They're probably just going, "No, Joss, you can't make that twist." But it's like all of Rossum in that it's treated as something that the viewer ought not to wish to happen. Back in the present, Ballard, Adele, Mellie, Topher, Echo/Caroline, and Boyd meet up in a parking center. Mellie has been told that she's inactive, and even though she still wants to be romantic with Ballard, he insists this is bad because her desire was created by Topher and isn't real. Though this premise will be questioned in a moment, I like that he's trying to not take advantage of her in the same manner as Ballard Prime not wanting to take advantage of Echo. Boyd has drugged Echo/Caroline to prevent her from revealing him as the founder. Whoever is in control is delirious and in pain, so they knock her out. Boyd insists that they need to go to Tucson to attack Rossum, while Ballard says there's no way they can win without Echo.
Without her, we're screwed.
Even though Boyd's the bad guy, the way they both agree that Echo is the center of this group of freedom fighters makes Dollhouse stand out as more feminist than other shows. And the solution comes from Adele, who plans to use Echo as a bargaining chip. This goes less than well. Clyde 2.0 is there in whiskey, and while he previously seemed to have a relatively harmless, subservient personality, now he's assertive and honestly a bit scary. It's worth noting that transgender imprints seem sexist both ways, where the male personalities in female bodies have both been scary, while the female personalities in male bodies have been used to present an idea of degradation for lowering men to a womanly level.
Guy asked me to help find his mommy, and did I want to play pretty princess with him? Said he's not gonna like kindergarten because there's boys.
There's also some transphobia with regard to Clyde 2.0, where he seems disturbing to interact with for more than his occupying the body of a friend, who Boyd has essentially murdered off screen. Clyde 2.0 takes Adele to his office, supposedly to thank her for delivering Echo, who he indicates will save Rossum when things start to go to hell. He makes some villainous statements that highlight Joss's anti-capitalist message, and then he flirts with Adele in an intimidating way. It's not hard to see this as a transphobic take on the evil lesbian trope. Boyd, Topher, Ballard, and Mellie are taken to a holding cell. Boyd gets the door open and declares he's taking Topher to rescue Caroline, and that Ballard and Mellie should go look for a weapons cache. Boyd leads Topher to a development room where Rossum has been working on the tech Topher designed to wipe and imprint anyone, but they haven't yet figured out how to successfully build one. Boyd suggests to Topher that he should take one of the imprinting devices and take it the rest of the way so as to give them a weapon against Rossum, and Topher gets to work. Caroline wakes up in a Rossum medical room with both Echo and Caroline personas working together harmoniously. She knows that Boyd is the villain and goes to take out her vengeance. Meanwhile, Anthony and Priya return to the dollhouse to help their friends and find a deserted war zone. Dead people are everywhere, but someone has removed the security footage, so they don't know what happened. Topher, however, has left behind the imprint of himself that he used to hack the DC dollhouse. After some deliberation, Anthony allows himself to be wiped so that Topher can take control. Topher 2.0, who was expecting to just do a job for Adele, is completely freaked out by everything, but he remembers that he had a hidden camera set up to see if Ivy was stealing his snacks. They look at the footage and see Boyd drugging Caroline, which makes them realize that Boyd is the bad guy. Priya wants to go rescue the others, but Topher doesn't want to go himself, so he gives back Anthony along with instructions on how to imprint him with advanced military skills. They then head to Tucson. Ballard and Mellie get to the cache and arm themselves. Mellie asks Ballard why they took her with them, and he admits it's because he cares about her. Because he is technically an imprint himself, he is able to legitimize imprinted personalities. While the main function of dollhouse imprinting is rape on one level, discussed more in my video defining dollhouse rape. This is avoided in this circumstance because both Ballard 2.0 and Mellie are aware they're artificial, and can make their own decisions moving forward. Whether or not it's artificial, the love they feel is real. So Topher finishes the weaponized tech. Boyd praises him and says he's glad he chose him.
I'm glad I chose you.
Before Topher can ask what that means, Caroline attacks him. Clyde 2.0 holds both Caroline and Adele at gunpoint and gets her to back off. Caroline reveals Boyd is the founder and asks why he went to so much trouble to get them there.
You're here because you're my family. I love you guys.
Meanwhile, Mellie and Ballard approach Rossum's mainframe. Ballard is thinking like his gun is his only tool, but Mellie sensibly points out that all they have to do is shut down the cooling system and let the system overheat. Back with Boyd, Topher figures out that Boyd killed Bennett through Claire. Boyd dismisses that as a sacrifice that Topher had to make. Boyd talks about how Topher, Adele, and Echo's characters have progressed throughout the show, and indicates that he is responsible for everything. He says he chose them to be his family as the leaders of the world, who will survive and dominate while the rest of the world burns. The whole thing is a deconstruction of the Wizard of Oz formula, where the wise figure is hated for playing God and manipulating everyone, which further extends the anti-authoritarian message. Boyd represents Rossum, which in turn represents capitalism and sex trafficking, and Boyd is hated as the ultimate villain that screws up everyone's lives.
Do you want to be the destroyed? Or the destroyers?
You are spectacularly insane.
I believed you. You pretended to care for me, and I believed you. How could you do that?
I know you're angry.
Don't touch me.
Boyd continues that Caroline has a natural immunity to imprinting, which is how Echo was able to form. He announces that Rossum will harvest her spinal fluid to create a vaccine against imprinting. She indicates that she'll fight him off, but he uses the disruptor on her. More of Topher's tech being used for evil. Mellie and Ballard damage the cooling system, so Boyd tells Adele to activate Mellie's sleeper protocol. Though he puts a gun to her head, Adele calmly refuses. So Boyd digs up the recording of Adele activating her and plays it over the intercom. Mellie turns into the Terminator and attacks Ballard.
Terminator.
Ballard is able to get through to her, and she's able to take control just long enough to kill herself to prevent the sleeper protocol from retaking control. This has been criticized as another fridge stuffer arriving just after the Bennett death and getting closer. While this is true, you have to consider this scene as a gender-flipped sequel to the one in the left hand, where Bennett tries to kill Echo through Perrin. In the left hand, a woman zaps a man into a killer to attack another woman. This woman briefly gets through to the man, but the man is ultimately killed by brain wiping soon after.
And has cost me everything.
Leaving the woman to fight Rossum on her own. Now in the Hollow Men, a man zaps a woman to kill another man, who gets through to her briefly before she is killed, leaving him to fight Rossum on his own. Feminists freaked out about the left hand because it depicts a man beating up a woman, regardless of the fact that he is controlled by another woman at the time. For the Hollow Men, no one complained about a woman attacking a man, but sometimes talk about Boyd controlling Mellie, as an example of Joss Whedon constantly depicting men attacking women. You know, because Bennett doing the exact same thing to Perrin has no value. Yeah, while the MRAs would say this indicates misandry on the part of such feminists, I think it actually indicates internalized misogyny. It's not that feminists appreciate Bennett having power over Perrin. They fail to acknowledge that she has any power at all. It's not the science fiction premise that stands in the way because they can acknowledge Boyd's power over Mellie. It's that only men are acknowledged as having the power to act and compel. It's not Joss who's lacking as a feminist here. So yeah, Mellie is stuffed into the fridge, but she's killed off as a female counterpart to Perrin. I think this really just shows that the show has a feminist handling of characters, for not treating women as delicate flowers that must be protected at all times, while the men can participate in violence to the fullest extent. Dollhouse puts women in the same full-blown violent circumstances as men, and treats them just as well as the men by allowing them to be hurt just as much as the men. So Rossum preps Caroline for surgery, and it's worth noting that the strategically placed bandages are very skimpily arranged. While sexually objectifying clothing is forgivable in depictions of sexual exploitation, in this scene it's clearly just gratuitous sexuality for the male gaze. Boyd tries to use the handler trigger to make her compliant, but she harshly rejects it. The procedure starts, and it painfully objectifies Caroline, but only in a way to emphasize Rossum's evil. The male gaze problem does not extend to the actual painful procedure part. After Boyd leaves, Anthony and Priya come rescue her. She tells them to rescue Adele and Topher and then find Ballard and Mellie and get out, while she meanwhile destroys Rossum once and for all. Anthony and Priya free Adele and Topher indicates that they now need to destroy all of the tech.
We wiped this tech off the face of the earth.
Caroline runs into Clyde 2.0. She tries to get through to Whiskey, but Clyde 2.0 takes advantage to disarm her.
You know, this is the first time I can hit a girl without feeling bad about it.
That line says to me that Clyde 2.0 is sexist, and that this sexism is part of Rossum's villainy. He does not respect women as equal to men, but rather considers them innately weak and buys into the old patriarchal notions about how men have to protect women. Dollhouse is feminist because it rejects the idea that women are delicate and shows that women can be fighters to the same degree as men, and can be hurt to the same degree as men. Topher is more feminist than Clyde 2.0 because he respects Bennett enough to hit her without indicating that she's lesser than him and that he has to feel bad about hitting her. Caroline and Clyde 2.0 duke it out. Now, some feminists characterize this as displaying Joss Whedon's misogyny, as written by 3 women, for putting female injury on display, allowing men to celebrate women hurting each other. This forgets that Amy Acker's character is currently a man, so any hit Caroline lands on whiskey is the act of a woman hitting a man. More than that, it emphasizes how truly misogynistic the supposed feminists are for thinking that women have no place in combat, that war is only the realm of men. It really is like an argument from a first waver about second wave feminism hurting women by saying women can succeed in roles typically considered masculine. I mean, shouldn't we be past that by now? Boyd runs into Ballard, who thinks that Adele is the traitor and not Boyd. Boyd decides to lead Ballard to her to kill her. Caroline knocks out Clyde 2.0 and encounters Ballard and Boyd. Boyd holds a gun to Ballard, who is now essentially the damsel in distress, being dependent on Caroline to save him. Caroline and Boyd are the main players now. Ballard tells Caroline to just shoot, and Boyd talks arrogantly about how Echo loves Ballard too much to let Caroline fire. Caroline, much in the style of the protagonist of Joss Whedon's previous project Speed, shoots Ballard in the leg to make him a useless hostage. Boyd and Caroline fight, and Boyd catches Caroline in a vulnerable position, but Topher wipes him from behind.
Did I fall asleep?
For a little while.
Even though Caroline wasn't the one to deliver the final blow, I think the fact that she was a main figure in the fight makes it feminist enough. They have the active version of Boyd blow himself up, and destroy the Rossum mainframe that way. They evacuate the building and watch it blow up. All of them stood up to the evil organization controlling their lives and seized control of their destinies, which is a meaningful victory even if we know it won't last. 10 years later, Caroline and Ballard wander the apocalyptic wasteland. That story will have to be resolved in the next part, however.